Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Good morning and welcome to the David and David on Real Estate podcast. We are on episode number 61.
61. So we're still celebrating our 60th. This is part two of our 60th celebration. We're doing our recap. I think I've got this on the right way. So we're still, I don't have one that says 61, but we're just going to have to do for 60. But we're still celebrating this historic event. So we got through how far in our, we were almost halfway last week.
We got through the first 26 episodes and we're on 27 today. And David, I don't know what it would feel like to be 60, but I imagine if I ever turned 60, I would be celebrating 60 probably for the next 9 years and refusing to add any more digits to that number.
Well, let me give you some advice, my friend. When it comes your time to get to 60, you decline. Okay, you refuse it, you don't accept it. And you keep it going. It's you get into denial. That's probably the best term.
Yeah.
There's a difference between turning 40, turning 50, turning 60. I don't want to even think about turning 70 at some point, but anyway, it's changing. But 60 episodes of a podcast is pretty good if you think about, back to our discussions about even putting this together, and when back when COVID started and everything, and how's this going to look, and what are we going to do, and are we going to make a difference, and are we going to listen, and are we going to watch, and in the meantime, we've created a following. We've got some people that are very interested in watching this, and I think we're doing what we set out to do. We're trying to help raise the bar.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I didn't think we're going to get to 60 episodes, but it's pretty cool that we're here and that we keep educating, raising the bar, and that we're finding topics to still talk about. And by the way, if anybody has any questions or any ideas for things that they'd like David and I to discuss, send them in, because we want to hear from you guys. We want to tailor this and help you guys. And really touch on some of the trendy issues affecting the industry. And there's lots going on. And, the industry changes day by day and week by week. And, David Korman and I were at the forefront of those changes. And we see those changes happening all the time. And we got to stay on top of them. And, one of the changes that's coming, David, and this is a little off topic, but the foreign ban is coming into effect in January of 2023. And, there's very little information surrounding the details of what this is going to look like, but my office is already getting questions. What does that mean? How does that change? How is that going to change how we do business? If a foreign buyer wants to buy, what do we tell them? What are the rules surrounding the foreign buyers ban? How long is it going to last for? So, these policy changes are being implemented all the time. And your office and my office, we have to stay at the forefront and understand all the complex issues affecting our industry. And, we're happy to do that and to transfer that knowledge and help you guys navigate these complexities as well.
Yeah, and I think we did talk about it a little bit when they first announced the foreign ban, but now there's a few more details are coming out, but not much yet. But we're probably going to do a webinar in the near future, or a podcast, excuse me. I will do a webinar also, I'm sure, for your agents on the topic, but we'll for sure get that as a topic for a podcast once we get a few more details, once they release a little bit more about how it's going to work, and then some of it is, so how is it going to work, and then we're still projecting how that might affect the market, and is it going to have a real difference? And I'm skeptical, as I was when NRST came in the first time, and then when they amended NRST about because we've discussed it before, it's a small percentage of the market that's driven by foreign investors. So
yeah, it was really interesting to get Carlo Gomez's take on the percentage of foreign transactions in the marketplace, because his firm has access to the statistics, right? So a little bit more in-depth conversation, and he thought that the number is closer to 10 to 15% for foreign investment to Canada. So when the numbers are that large, it might have an impact, but I'm sure there's, ways around, either engaging people that live here or locally that have their permanent residence, and I'm sure buyers are going to find a way to navigate and circumnavigate some of those restrictions, not that we're encouraging that, but definitely an interesting conversation topic for sure.
Yeah, and it was sort of interesting because I think the numbers that came out when the NRST first came out, it was more like it might be 5-6% of the market. It was more along that. And now Carl's telling us it might be double that, which is sort of interesting because both could be true. At the time when the NRC first came in, it was a much smaller percentage. And even though they imposed a 15% tax, in a certain area, and now they made it a 20% tax and made it all over the province, the reality is we're still attracting foreign buyers to push through that, where it didn't stop or slow down the foreign buyers. It actually, it increased the percentage of foreign buyers during that time, which means it's still a better place to invest your money if you're a foreign buyer. Even if you got to pay a 20% tax on it, you're still better off getting your money out of whatever country you're getting it out of and investing it in Ontario real estate.
Yeah, and look, some of those countries like Venezuela, I mean, their inflation rate is through the roof, right? So, 20%, you got to offset the local inflation rate that you're losing on your money as well, right? So, obviously the calculations are making sense, and investing in our real estate is making sense for those people in a big way.
Yeah. All right, we better get on to
Yeah,
our
absolutely.
recap, or we're going to run out of time again.
Yeah, we love doing this. We just get so passionate with a topic, and half an hour later. But with the recap. So podcast number 27. This was a great podcast where we had Sabia Ali, which is the broker of record for Sutton Summit Realty, come on as a guest speaker. And Sabia was really talking about the culture, relationships, and authenticity when running, a terrific brokerage, and what that really does when it comes to relationships with the agents and the culture within the brokerage, and how that really sets our brokerage apart. Because David, when you're in a commission environment, it can be very stressful dealing with other sales representatives that are also commission based, right? And at Sutton, we have a different approach where we collaborate, where we work together, where we share ideas, and that creates an environment of working together and collaboration as opposed to adversity, right? And one of the stories I share with agents is we hired a transaction coordinator that came from a different brokerage. And she really put things into perspective for us. And she said to us, David, I'll never forget, one of the agents was walking towards the photocopier, and they literally had the piece of paper like this because they didn't want any other agent to see what they're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
And that's, a crazy concept because,
Right.
I'm of the opinion that there's an abundance of business out there. Right. And some of the agents who are with different brokerages have a very scarcity mindset, right? And scarcity often leads to a feeling of the fact that you're by yourself, and you're not working in a team environment, and then the fact that you're not winning as a team, right? And that's really the opposite of the culture we try to cultivate at Sutton.
Well, look, we had a great discussion in that podcast, and you're talking about a world-class brokerage. It starts with world-class leadership within a brokerage, and Sabia Ali is always a breath of fresh air. I could talk to her all day long. She's got past experience in the business world that's got nothing to do with real estate, but she draws on it to create a culture within this business and be there for all the other agents, and understands the importance, just from a business owner's perspective, of how important a culture is for any business, any successful business. You have to try and create that. And look, there's successful businesses successful brokerages where the privacy of the agents is paramount, and that's the culture they create, and they're all going to hide their documents and not let anybody know what they're doing, and they're a bunch of free agents on an island, and that works for some people, but it doesn't work for most people. And I think you're creating a much better environment with the way you're trying to do it. Like you said, there's enough business. You don't have to be competitive within your own brokerage, other than to challenge each other and push each other to do
100%.
better, to learn, to get better, improve, etc. That's the competitive culture that you want. And there's enough business out there with other, for you to compete with other brokerages too. But the key is make yourself the best agent you could be. Make yourself the best, and the business comes if you do that. You focus on that. I think that's the culture you guys are working on. So I think our discussion that day was really good. And it's like everything, it's not just applicable to your broker, it's applicable to my firm, it's applicable to anybody's small business.
100%. Culture is key. And, sometimes you can get away with, paying employees just a little bit less if you have the right culture. And sometimes you can get away with other things in a business environment if you have the right culture, because people want to stay with you and people want to work for you, right? And attracting and retaining employees and agents is by far the most costly endeavor. And if you create the right culture and they don't leave and they want to stay with you and they want to work with you as a business owner, it really alleviates a lot of the stress of running a business, right? Especially when it comes to employees. We know the labor situation that we're in, how tough it is out there for small businesses to attract and retain great people. But running any successful businesses starts with people, right? People make or break your business, and you got to create the right environment for them to thrive, for them to grow, for them to want to come into work, for them to want to be there, right? And that's right. Really important.
Yeah, and then we go from talking a little bit about your brokerage in episode 27 and your business culture to episode 28, where all of a sudden you're involved in a brand new venture, a related venture to some degree, and I see you're wearing the t-shirt today in agent. I still haven't managed to get a t-shirt, a hat, nothing from an agent.
Oh man, you got to change that. I mean, you guys are lawyers, and you guys helped us in corporate.
You've referred to me as an agent for an agent, but I don't even have a t-shirt.
Yes, absolutely. But David, this was the most popular episode we've ever done. I'm just looking at the statistics here, and we have probably 50% more views on podcast 28 than we do on most other episodes, other than episode 1, the very first one, where I guess a lot of people are tuning in. And this is an important podcast as well, not just because I'm involved with it, but the concept here is that people really want to build wealth, and they want to build wealth by using real estate as their vehicle to build wealth. And agents are just not receiving enough education, and there's a big knowledge gap for them to really confidently work with investors, right? So I got involved in this company because I saw how it helped my agents really win. And not only did it help them win to do more business, but we found that 25% of the agents who took the training became investors themselves. And as a broker owner, this was a big win for me. And I'm going to share a really quick story here. I know we're short on time because we have tons of episodes to review, but about 4 years ago, I had one of my seasoned agents come into my office. He was about 86 years old at the time. And he sat down, he started telling me about a new listing that he just got. So I put my broker hat on and I congratulated him. And he had this puzzled look on his face. And he says to me, David, you don't understand. I don't want to be trading in real estate. I want to be able to retire, enjoy my retirement. I'm taking this listing because I have to, because I have no money to my name. And that really hit me like a bag of bricks, and from that point onwards, I view my role, and I view the leadership role of any brokerage manager, that we have a responsibility to our agents to have those conversations with them and make sure that not only their clients are winning by buying and investing in real estate, but the agent themselves is winning too. we talk to our agents, what's your exit strategy? What are you going to do when you retire? And how many years do you want to retire? Do you still want to keep selling real estate when that time comes? And realtors are independent contractors. We don't have a pension plan. We don't have anything to fall back on. So it's so much more important that we look at real estate as an investment vehicle for ourselves as well. And the earlier that we start, right, the more we can leverage that over time.
Yeah. So I would encourage anybody to go back and watch that episode if you haven't seen it yet, because you get a lot of the basic information of, the background behind it, how you guys operate it, what the vision was. And it was a great launching pad to some degree for the program. And you guys have made tremendous strides since then. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thanks. We'll have to do a follow-up episode because there's so many amazing things happening where I don't want to get into details here, but yeah, I would encourage everybody to watch the episode and reach out to the in-agent team, get your in-agent designation. It will do wonders for your real estate career.
Yeah.
Podcast 29, meet Sean Shake, master salesperson and one of my mentors. We discussed guerrilla marketing, NLP, and Sean has over 1,200 5-star Google reviews. He's a force to be reckoned with, and every single time I have any sort of interactions with Sean, it just you feel that energy. And you just want to spend more time around him, and how he approaches business, how he approaches sales, how he has an unwavering focus on customer service and the client. He really understands. He's just amazing to be in the room with. I would encourage everybody, like podcast 29, take some time and really listen to what Sean has to say and absorb everything that's coming out of his mouth, because he really is a master of his craft.
Yeah, and I think by having Sean on, we stayed true to our whole concept of the podcast, where we want to have content in there that's not pure real estate. It's just small business. And some of the principles that apply, whether it's a law firm, whether it's a real estate brokerage, whether it's a car dealership, like there's certain principles, there's certain things that apply and that we could all benefit from. And I think those discussions with Sean were fabulous that day, and that it's stuff that everybody could use.
100%. Great episode. I really enjoyed that one. Podcast 30. This is where we review the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board 2022 Outlook Report, and we reviewed 2021 year in review. So the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board does a great job with providing statistics and coming out with lots of reports. I encourage every realtor to really look at the website and take a look at some of the reports, read through them. They provide a month over month report as well. And once a year, they come up with their yearly report, lots of great information on what the market's doing and what their projected year is doing. And the industry actually really looks forward to that report coming once a year. And there's a lot of industry organizations that really rely on that report to see what they can expect from the real estate market in the upcoming year. So that's a great report, and we go over the whole Outlook report from cover to cover, offering our opinions and just discussing some of those statistics.
Yeah, so again, it was a very relevant topic at the time. It was fresh news. It was a good analysis. I think you did a great job breaking it down for everybody. And, and then you could look back at these things and say, what held true, what's not true. But it's important to go through these things. And I know, you focus on statistics a lot. When the early podcasts we did, we opened up with statistics just about every podcast for a while, because you get the numbers and you see the trends. And it's important to take a look at that once in a while. You got to compare to something to understand what the market really is. So we did that in that episode for sure.
Yeah, and I think the more knowledgeable you are as a realtor and as a sales representative, the more confident you are, and the more you can, have those important and tough conversations with buyers and sellers that are not rooted in emotions, but they're actually rooted in statistics, which are a lot harder to dispute, right? So you want to be armed with that data whenever you're talking to clients, especially in a market like we are in today.
Yep.
Podcast 31, we had Sabia Ali as a guest, and I think Sabia actually co-hosted this episode with you, David, where you guys discussed some home inspections, chattels, and pricing strategies in today's shifting market. Now, I just looked at the date. That episode was recorded in March of 2022, so I think that was the beginning of the shift that we're kind of seeing in the market as of today.
Yeah, and when you're in the moment, you don't realize that you're in the middle of a shift, right? You're still thinking you're in the old market, but when you look back at it now, there was definitely a shift going on at the time, right? So, and that after being in in that previous market for a relatively long period of time, because there was a lot of predictions that wouldn't last then too. So, but in that podcast, we were discussing, I mean, I know a lot of the issues of inspections and issues about chattels. What's a chattel? What's a fixture? We deal with those type of issues all the time with our closings, and some agents are making mistakes about not describing those things properly in agreements of purchase and sale. And, it leads to problems that sometimes don't come up until closing, when all of a sudden things are taken out that shouldn't be taken out. You run into issues with hot water tanks and furnaces that are they rent to own? Are they leased? Is there a requirement for buyer to assume these contracts? Things like that. So lots of meat on the bone in that episode.
Yeah, and I would encourage everybody just to have a conversation around chattels and fixtures. Don't just say, hey, these are the chattels and fixtures included, and move on. Actually spend the time, go through each individual item, and make sure you do that on both sides, right? So always review the chattels and fixtures with the seller and with the buyer. Go line by line, item by item, and then pause and take a little bit of time. Say, are we missing anything? Is there anything else we should be including? And another good practice to do this is to look at the pictures of the house as you're going through a list of chattels, because sometimes you see something in the picture which will jog your memory, and you would say, oh, you know what, I didn't add that water softener that was described that we see in one of the basement pictures. Let's add that water softener. Let's add that central vacuum to the list to make sure that there's no surprises come closing.
Yeah, and if you're going to err, you err on the side of being more descriptive as opposed to less descriptive. Like, 100%. Don't just say, all other chattels included in, as seen or something like that. If you're really concerned about anything in particular, whether it's a chattel or a fixture, you're not sure which one it is, make sure you describe it properly in the agreement. Even if it's, the big screen TV that's mounted, if you want the wall mounts left, put it in. And then if you put that in and it's accepted, then there's no issue, where those mounts something that's movable. Is it a fixture? Is it a chattel? Make it clear. If the buyer wants it, make sure you put it in. If the seller doesn't want to sell it, make sure you exclude it. And just be clear.
Absolutely. Podcast 32, real estate teams and why the team concept is exploding in popularity.
Yeah, and this was an interesting one. I know I relayed some stories of my son's experience, because he's part of a team, and how beneficial that's been for him from day one. The experience that he got in his first year as a real estate agent by being part of a team, and what he was exposed to was probably the equivalent of 5 years experience, because it wasn't just the deals that he's working on, it's the deals everybody else is working on. So for a lot of people, that's a great option to be part of a team. For some people, it's not their personality. They're better suited not to be a part of a team. But then I encourage them to be in the right brokerage too, where you have that team culture. Even if you're an independent contractor there, you can still be exposed to what other people are doing. You could still go to cover for somebody else's open house and have an opportunity to meet some people, and people aren't being protective over their turf. Everybody's fighting for the same turf, but there's a lot of advantages to be part of a team. So it's something that people should explore and decide whether it's right for them.
100%. Great episode. Podcast 33. Here we talk about interest rates, Ukraine, and the global economy.
Yeah, well, and look, this is back in March, right? We're already talking about interest rate changes, even though, like this was early on. We've had a few changes since then. And the effect that interest rate changes, the effect that what happened in Ukraine has on the economy, the supply shortages it creates in the market. And also another thing we've talked even with Carl Gomez today, it sort of creates a pause when world events like that happen. Everybody's got to, catch their breath a little bit and try and figure out, what does this mean? Where is this going? How is this going to affect us? So it sort of creates a natural pause in the market until people try and figure out, again, what's going on in the world and what's changing, and therefore what can I do in terms of my desire to buy another real estate property or sell a property.
Yeah, and we saw that in a big way, and I think that's one of the reasons why we, had that kind of conversation, is because, people were still really coming to the idea of how this is going to affect them, and how this is going to affect Europe, how this is going to affect, the world on a large scale, and people were scared, right? And we saw that being really reflective in their decisions to buy and sell property. And there was a big pause in the market. And, we were going through this period of time where people were basically trying to see how this is going to affect them. And the supply shortages were rampant in that time period, right? So there was a certain adjustment there. And I think, I'm happy to say that, people have come to feel more comfortable with the situation, and we're starting to see the number of transactions slowly and steadily increase, especially in the last 2 weeks or so. And we're at the end of August of 2022 right now.
Right, and and at the time when things were happening in Ukraine, there was so much uncertainty. We didn't know, is this the beginning of World War III? Is everybody going to be jumping in on this thing? There's a lot of uncertainty. So there's a natural pause in it, a lot of concern, obviously, for what was going on there at the time. And 6 months later, it's still going on. And it's front page news, for so long then. And now everybody's, well, yeah, what's going on in Ukraine? Like, every day there's something going on there, but we're not talking about it every day as our first conversation, like we were back in March. But there's, still not a good situation, but it certainly had a big effect globally, not just locally here, but globally on the economy, and created, the rise in gas prices, which led to the inflation, which has a huge impact on the economy. But now the prices have gradually been coming back down. Inflation is a little bit more under control, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah. Podcast 34, everything you need to know about assignments, with special guest Jonathan Hakohen. And this is part 1. I don't think we actually finished these. I think we did a part 2 as well. And I think there's many more parts to come, because assignments is one of those topics that has layers and layers and layers of complexities. So Jonathan does a great job here in diving in and really explaining some of those layers of complexities. I would encourage everybody to become familiar and listen to podcast 34, because there's some great information in there. And we're going to continue to do more and continue to dive deeper into this topic, because there's much more to unwrap, and tax implications, and there's a lot going on there as well.
Yeah, and Jonathan's a fabulous guest and loves being on the podcast. And he's doing his own podcast, The Chosen Life, which has really taken off, and he's done a great job with that. He's helped us with this podcast and helped us raise the bar on this. So we, thanks to Jonathan. But this was part 1 of assignments, and I always Mark and Jonathan, myself as our assignment guru. We did get back to do part 2, but it wasn't until May, because this was in March. We did part 1, and then we got involved with. We were in our lead up to our live podcast that we were doing at the Buzz conference. So we had a certain number of people from the Buzz conference as guests. We didn't get back to Jonathan, I think, until May, like almost 2 months later to do part 2. But we'll talk about that again. But we did get back with them. So there's great material in our library of podcasts on assignments. But there's been significant changes more recently, and we're going to get back to another episode on assignments to go through what changes have affected assignments more recently.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always enjoy my episodes or the episodes we do with Jonathan, because he's just such a wealth of knowledge, especially on this topic. But I encourage everybody to start with episode 34. And then we get back into assignments part 2 on episodes 44. So 10 episodes later in May. Podcast 35, we have a fireside chat with Virginia Munden, who's a realtor and one of the co-founders of the Buzz Conference. And Virginia is an amazing influencer. She really cares about the industry, and she's doing a great job really elevating the bar, bringing influencers together under one roof, and really teaching realtors by really highlighting some of the amazing trends we have in our industry. And this podcast in particular is the longest podcast that we've ever recorded. But, when you have a person like Virginia on, and you can just talk for hours and hours about different issues affecting the industry, I thoroughly enjoyed this podcast. And I know we got into some really amazing topics of discussion with her.
Yeah, no, Virginia's just a ball of fire. I think it's one of my favorite podcasts for sure. She's got so much information. She's extremely entertaining to listen to, whether in person or on a podcast. She's always entertaining. She knows everybody. Like, she's so well connected. She knows the industry inside and out. She's worked in various aspects of it. She connects everybody together. Like you said, she's one of the best influencers that we've got. And she was putting this Buzz conference together, where we were going to be attending on 2 fronts: one to do our live podcasts, and one to with certain guests that were part of the Buzz conference, and then also to attend to talk about a seminar topic live there as well, which we did on Prex. But having her on to lead that off was just a fabulous episode.
Yeah, I know it really was, and I really enjoyed it as well. And it's so hard to pick a favorite because there's so many great episodes. But the fact that we talked for an hour and a half with Virginia really highlights how much there really was to discuss, and how we dove into some of those issues. And she is much more entertaining than you and I are. So I encourage everybody to listen to that podcast.
Well, and then you talk about entertaining guests. The next episode, I think, was one of the most entertaining guests we've had, Matt Leonetti, who's, I don't know, how do you describe him? He's
Well, I'm going to say this about Matt. I think Matt has one of the largest Instagram following out of any realtor that I know. I think he's up to like 46,000 guests, which, on a Canadian scale, at least, I think there's some realtors in the States that might have an equal or a little bit of a higher following. But to be the number 1 rated realtor in Canada on Instagram, I mean, that tells you quite a bit. And Matt did that by doing, amazing real estate videos. They're really entertaining. They're funny. They're witty. They're amazing. If you haven't had a chance to look up any of Matt Leonetti's videos, type in Matt Leonetti into YouTube. You're gonna have a ball. And Matt was on the verge of washing out of the real estate industry in his first 2 years. He was struggling with kind of finding his niche and really finding a way to interact and make any sort of headways in his career, and he really talks openly about that on the episode. But then when he gets into video, he really finds his calling, and the rest is history. He's super successful, very influential, and has 46,000 Instagram followers. So definitely listen to that episode. I think you're going to find it quite inspirational, just from a business building point of view, and from finding a niche, finding your niche in the real estate market point of view as well.
Yeah, he's just a great success story. And if you knew nothing about real estate, or you weren't an agent, or you weren't in the industry, and you just watch some of these videos, you'll be entertained by them. You could just sit down and watch an hour of these videos that he did, which are, you know, takeoffs on other things, and spoofs, and you'd recognize what he's trying to do. And he does it so well that, you know, that everybody's, okay, when's the next one coming out? And now he's spending a lot of his time, you know, being, you know, doing podcasts and being a guest on everybody else's podcast. Everybody wants a piece of him too. So we talked about that. Like, do you still have time to be an agent and still work, you know, for your clients and things like that? Because he's getting so good at the social media aspect of it that, you know, that might be his ultimate career.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of things fall into place here. You know, does he build a team around him? Does he double down and really focus on what he loves doing, which is creating these entertaining videos, right?
Yeah.
Think about, you know, what Matt could do if he got his in-agent designation, went back to all his people and all his past clients and converted them to real estate investors, and, you know, taught them to, you know, buy more real estate from the point of investing. I mean, there's a lot of stories here, and a lot of business practices that you can kind of build on that story, and it's a great one. So I would encourage everybody to listen to podcast number 36.
Yeah, and we go from that, a legend in the making, to already someone who we consider a legend in the industry, is Richard Silver, who's also one of the key people speaking at the Buzz conference. I think he was speaking a number of times during the Buzz conference. I think he was on a couple different panels and things like that. So we're very excited to get him on in advance of the Buzz conference to share his story and his views on the real estate industry and where it's going.
Yeah, and Richard was past president of Shreb. You know, he loves technology, very well connected. He's the vice president for Sotheby's. He's been in the industry for, you know, decades, and knows a lot of people, and a great wealth of knowledge as well. And you know, that was a great conversation that we have with Richard as well, about trends, about technology, about how real estate is changing. And you know, he was the opening speaker, I think, at the upcoming Buzz event. So we asked him how he feels about that. So great episode. Encourage everybody to listen to it as well.
Yeah, and that led us into our actual attendance at the Buzz conference, where we were set up, you know, right in, you know, the main intersection of the conference, to do live podcasts as things were going on. And we had, I think we did 3 live podcasts, I think, that day. And the first one was with a couple of lovely guests, Katerina Markovich and Ina Bogdanov, who are the co-founders of IK Financial Mortgage Brokers. And I remember them being a little nervous coming on when we first got there, and I think we put them at ease pretty quickly. Say, hey, we're just talking, and we had a great conversation with them about their rise through the ranks, how they got together, how they created their brokerage, what their culture is. I think a lot of our focus of our discussion was on the culture of their firm.
Yeah, culture and the unwavering focus on the client that they have, right? And we talked about their relationship and their partnership and how they kind of met as well. And it was an intriguing story, and I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. You know, anybody who's thinking about possibly hiring a new mortgage broker or getting a second opinion, I would highly encourage you to approach these 2 young ladies, because the way they approach their clients and the way they approach the business is phenomenal. And I think you're going to really enjoy working with them.
Yeah, and I think we went from them to, I think one of the most interesting speakers, I think, that they had at the Buzz conference. And I've seen, he's speaking all over the place. I get things, daily about where he's speaking next. There's a Kendall Netmaker who's just got an incredible background story coming from nothing and making a career for himself as a public speaker, as an influencer. I don't know how else you describe him.
Well, this is somebody who went through tremendous adversity, David, and he rose to the occasion, and he's out there speaking about some of the daily adversities that our native people go through on an everyday basis in this country. And it's a conversation that needs to happen more often. And I think we as industry leaders need to talk more about this and need to raise awareness, and we need to do whatever we can collectively to help these people in whatever way we can. So great conversation with Kendall, and hearing his story was extremely emotional. When he was talking about living in his family home and sharing one room with his brothers and sisters, and he went into some detail and described that whole situation. It was you can really feel the emotions coming through his story. So I give Virginia a lot of credit for bringing a keynote speaker like Kendall into the Buzz event and raising awareness about this important issue.
Yeah, and his story is so inspiring. And here's a guy, who is so humble. Like, he's successful now. I think you can't but label him as successful. He got out of that situation. He's made a great life, or a better life for himself. Okay. But his whole focus is, it's not about what I'm doing for me. His whole focus is, how can I help others do the same? How can I inspire others or encourage others or give them the tools to make a better life and do this better? So he was just very inspirational. Like I said, it was an emotional discussion, and I would encourage everybody to take a look at that one.
Especially leaders, right? If you're a leader in an industry, you have to give back, right? And this is the idea that he's all about. And what we're trying to do with this podcast is really no different. We're trying to give back, and we encourage other leaders to do the same.
Yeah. And then our next live guest that day, I think it was one of the ones, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think it was one of the ones that you enjoyed the most. We bring on a broker from another brokerage, and you guys get into it, and he's got a totally different approach than yours, but I think you guys had a great banter, great discussion about it. And I think I'm just sort of listening in and picking off certain things from the two of you, but I think you're both learning from each other and enjoying the things that are common about brokers, but also really enjoying the things that are different in your approaches.
Yeah, this is a little unexpected. I mean, I didn't know Samuel, but the alignment was extremely strong, and the conversation was great, and I did really enjoy this episode. And Samuel is a great leader, and the hearing his perspective was tremendous. So. It was a great episode. I encourage everybody to listen to it as well. I had a lot of fun recording that one for sure. Just the alignment was great with him, and what he does for his agents and how he approaches the business. And we talked about this whole concept of investing and winning and building culture, and there was a lot of alignment there for sure.
Yeah. So he was the last of our live podcasts that we did that day, and Buzz Conference was really a special event. I think everybody really enjoyed being there, having a chance. It was canceled a couple times, postponed a couple times. That Virginia had to do, previous ones as just a non-live event. And I think everybody just liked the fact that we're able to do a live event and get together and have that. So that was great. But it also gave us the opportunity to meet some other people through the Buzz Conference that we were then able to have on as guests. I think the next one we had on was it was Natasha Koifman, a PR specialist and entrepreneur. Talk about an entrepreneur, growing a business. Like, what a great example she is.
She's a powerhouse, David, and she created one of the top PR firms in Canada. Her background is from New York, from Manhattan. I mean, New York and Manhattan, they do things a little bit differently, right? So she brought a lot of those concepts into Toronto, into our marketplace, and people were very receptive. And she leads one of the biggest and most successful PR firms in the country. And hearing her story and hearing the brands that she's involved with and hearing how she started. I think one of the stories that she talked about was reaching out to different editors and different contributors to magazines and to newspapers, and asking them, hey, what are you looking for? What do you want to write about? How do you approach your stories, and really understanding what those people are looking for, and then being able to talk to her clients and tailor stories to the way that these people really wanted to see it appear in magazines and prints and media, was such a big contributor to her success, right? And it's so easy to look at somebody who's super successful and say, oh, look, it comes so easy and so naturally to this person. But very few times you get to actually hear how they started and the hard work that they had to put in to get to where they are today. So great podcast with Natasha. I mean, she's a powerhouse. I don't know what else to say. And I would encourage everybody to really look at that episode. She talks about, what is PR, and how realtors can benefit from doing PR properly as well.
Right. And anyway, one of those great success stories, and it's great to have those type of people on. It goes back to our theme. We're talking business, and how regardless of the business, there's certain things that have to be done. It's common threads: hard work, creating a culture. We talked about hiring the right people, how important hiring is for her to continue it, and it's something you and I are always challenged with too, and trying to grow our firms as well. And anyways, it was a fascinating discussion. You definitely learned stuff from listening to her talk. And then, that led us into the next one, which was again, another great success story of someone that just sort of found their niche, found something interesting. And again, through hard work, created something out of relatively nothing. This was Jessie Lenouvel, founder of Listings Lab. And I forgot where she was speaking. Was from some island,
Barbados.
Was it Barbados?
Barbados. She moved to Barbados, and she talked a little bit about that, and the systems and the leverage she's able to put into her business to give her that flexibility and to be able to make that decisions. And she really embraced that. And now whenever she puts anything out, it's always picture of the beach and pictures of her feet up with her sandals. But she's really encouraging everybody to live their best life, and put in the systems and processes in place to be able to really push your business to a seven-figure business and be able to live that lifestyle. So great coach, great mentor, great influencer. And she really has the system and the tools to help people succeed. And I've spoken to lots of realtors at the Buzz conference that I ran into that work with Jess, and absolutely rave about her systems and her coaching, and have talked to me about what it's done to their business. So I would encourage any realtor that's listening to listen to episode 42 with Jess Lenouvel, and to reach out to Jess and her team and see how she can help take your business to the next level.
Yeah, a fabulous, interesting person, great success story. And that led us to the next episodes with Tom's story, I believe, right?
Yeah, episode 43 with Tom's story. And Tom is a younger realtor, but he's really taken the industry by storm by using video to educate clients and other realtors on the market, and on the current trends that are happening in the marketplace. And realtors tune into his stories to get their update on really what's happening and to get the pulse of the market. So in really 3 to 4 short years, Todd has really established himself as a powerhouse agent. And Tom was very open with us about what he does in terms of lead generation, client events, and he took us really step by step of what his roadmap looks in terms of creating his funnel and keeping his funnel full, and how he kind of approaches his business. So that was a very interesting episode, and Tom was very open about how he and what he does to build his business.
Yeah, no, it was great. And, and how to use social media properly and the advantages of it and things that are available to today's real estate agent, to today's entrepreneur, regardless of what biz you're in, that wasn't available years ago, and how you got to put the time and effort into it and create a way to do it. And he's sort of found that way, and he's happy to share his story. So anybody would benefit from listening to that one, which led us back to assignments part 2 that we talked about earlier with Jonathan Cohen. So everybody should get into that one for sure. And there will be a part 3 and a part 4 at some point, because it's ever changing. So we're going to circle back on that one in the near future, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, we will. And as you said, there's changes coming to assignments. So I mean, everybody should be listening to that. There has been so much pre-construction real estate sold in the last 3 years. And with the shifting market, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities in the assignment world to be able to pick up some of these properties where the current buyers that have bought will not be able to close on a lot of these properties because of the shifting market and because of the changing nature of our market right now. So I think this is going to be a very contentious topic. And I think realtors that really understand assignments and take the time and invest in the learning more about assignments are really going to come up ahead here.
Yeah, and I think you touched on the key point there with assignments. Like 3 to 5 years ago, when some of these projects first were being developed, there was a certain percentage of people that bought that were clearly investors, clearly buying it either to flip it on an assignment or buy it with the intention of renting it out, but it's like pure investment. And then you've got another percentage that are users. But because of the change during that 3 to 5 year period, and now with significant change to interest rates and the availability of funds, the amount of funds and the values changing, there's a whole bunch of people where whatever their intentions were 3 or 5 years ago, that's completely changed. Their circumstances are different. And now they've got a whole bunch of money in on deposits and these things, and some of them just don't have the ability to close themselves. So it's changed what they want to do. And now we got to look back. What are their assignment rights? Did they have a right to assign? What conditions is the current builders are the current builders imposing on them, and then how to navigate through that. So it's an ongoing battle, but it's an important one that's going to be really busy, I think, through the fall and into next spring as these projects get closer to being completed.
Yeah, and we always talk about niche marketing, right? But knowing that interest rates are rising, that there are going to be a substantial amount of buyers who are not going to be able to close on some of these transactions that they bought from the builder. The realtors that advertise to that specific pain point and say, hey, have you bought a pre-construction condo that you think you won't be able to close? Call me to discuss your options.
Right.
That's how you get an assignment listing. Right. And people are going to be reaching out to you and asking you questions. And if you can really dive in and understand this process and understand the complexities of assignments and really talk about those pains, you're going to win. Right. And you might find the buyer, and then you're going to get both sides of the commission on the assignment. So, great topic. And I would encourage everybody to take a little bit of time and really dive in and start understanding assignments in a big way moving forward. And then from there, we did episode number 45, building a winning team and catapult your growth with the HR Pro. David, I know your company uses a recruiting firm to help you with staffing, and we use the HR Pro at Sutton Summit. And Kate Tevis has been absolutely instrumental in finding us the right people to help grow our company and our business, right? And I've referred teams to Kate. I've referred other realtors who want to start a team to help them find the key members to help them grow. I encourage anybody who's looking for any sort of growth to go and talk to Kate, because you can't do it alone, okay? And anybody who tries to do everything themselves, a one-person team, there's a finite amount of time in a day, and you just can't do it. You need to be surrounded by good people in order for you to grow. And that goes for any business, realtors, entrepreneurs included. So the amount of benefits you're going to get from having a professional help source the right people for you to grow, I can't tell you how much time you're going to save and what it's going to do for your business. So I loved having Kate on the episode, and I think the services that she provides to business owners in the real estate industry are invaluable.
Well, look, here's the argument that I could put in another way. We discussed the advantage. Someone wants to sell their house. A lot of people think, well, you know what, if I sell it myself, I can save the commission. I can be my own agent. I can do it myself. I'll save the 5% commission or whatever that's going to be. So that everybody sort of has that thought. And then if they talk to me or to you, we're going to give them a whole list of reasons why you should just never do that. It's just not good for you. And it's going to cost you more money to do that. You're not going to save what you think you're going to save. You're not going to get the price. You're not going to get the timing. You're just get yourself in trouble, right? And it's no different when you think about it, when you're trying to hire people. You need the professionals to do the screening for you and to find the right person, to understand your firm, understand your needs, understand your culture, and try and find the right people. So yeah, the tendency to be, well, we just put an ad out, and my firm does it too. Sometimes we put ads out, sometimes we're going through recruiters. But I have to remind myself too, as an owner, like, if we're just trying to hire someone ourselves, or we're just trying to save a commission that we'd be paying to a recruiter. But on the other hand, the time and the effort that goes in to try to interview and go through resumes and try and find the right person, we don't have someone professionally trained that can ask the right questions and do all that screening for you, is really a waste of time. So yeah, we do some hiring directly at our firm, but most of the time it's because there was a direct contact. There was someone that directly referred somebody to us, or we happened to come across somebody in the course of business. But otherwise, it really makes sense to do it through a headhunter, through a recruiter that understands your culture and finds you the right person.
Yeah, I mean, guys, if you want to grow, go talk to Kate Tevis. She's a wealth of knowledge, and she can help put the right pieces and the right people in place to really help catapult your growth. So great episode 45. Encourage everybody to listen to. In episode 46, we had Brett Starkman talk about Realtor's Guide to Tax, Accounting, and saving some serious money.
Yeah, and Brett was on with us live at the Buzz conference. We did a live seminar on Prex, and it was great to have him on that day. And I think you and I just know how to defer to Brett's expertise on these matters, and he really makes it clear in a concise way about what's really important on these issues. So I think it's a great episode for everybody to tune into.
Yeah. Next episode 47, we had Sean Hurley talk about insurance and how to use insurance to save taxes for estate planning and to save money as well.
Yeah, and again, another topic, insurance. You know what you don't know, and I defer to tax experts and I defer to insurance experts. better for them to explain it than for me to try and explain that or understand it to a certain degree, which led us into the next one, which was talking about Muskoka cottage life, which is one of my favorite topics. You like the cottage life. I love the cottage life. And we had Teresa Mursky on, who was very interesting and a very interesting guest and someone that lives that cottage life experience and has through her family.
Yeah, and Teresa really talked about business communication, how important business communication is, and how to communicate with people, right? And I think the biggest thing that I took from that episode is that, and we don't do this often enough, David, but we have to ask our clients how they want to be communicated with, right? So we need to adapt our communication style to what our clients are expecting of us, right? And that basic concept, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, oh my God, we never think about it that way because you're so focused on you, right? On your communication, like what's my communication skills, which is great, but more important, how does your client want to be communicated with? So it's such a simple concept, but it can really go such a long way to improving the relationship and the communication you have with your clients.
Yep. And then we get into having a hero type of guest.
Yeah, this was episode 49. We had DeWitt Frazier, who is a former Olympian. And I mean, when you're in the room with DeWitt, you feel that energy from him. He's been around. I think he's attended 4 different Olympic Games, 2 as a competitor, and then 2 as a coach. And you just feel that energy from him. And DeWitt, I call him Coach. I've been training with DeWitt for 4 years now, boxing. Do it for the cardio component, and I do it to be around him, quite frankly. Just he's such a wealth of knowledge and positivity, and that championship mentality, you really feel it from him. That was a great episode as well.
Yeah, and just what you take out of his background, his success story, all comes from hard work and success. That's the point that he had sort of driven home. Everything he did as an athlete, his successes, although it was great coaching, great training, attitude, things like that, but you have to work hard. Same thing now, he's a successful coach, he's working hard. And that's the bottom line, how we encourage anybody. Surround yourself with good people that encourage you, keep you going, but you got to put the work in to be successful. And he was such an inspiration. And what we all can learn stuff from him and take it to any aspect of our business life and personal life.
Yeah, and hard work will always be talent, right?
Yep.
Talent will only take you so far. And even if you don't have talent, but you have hard work, you're going to be talented every single time.
Right. And all of a sudden, we're at episode 50. Like, where did that come from?
And here we talk about successfully closing a real estate transaction, a shifting market. So very timely episode as well. The importance of having a large deposit, the importance of keeping the buyer committed, the importance of having upfront conversations about, what is the financial strength of the buyer, right? Because the last thing you want to do is, sign a transaction, wait 90 days until closing, only to find out that the buyer isn't strong financially, that there isn't a large enough deposit to keep the buyer committed. And now you've put your seller in a situation where, there is not a successful closing.
Right. So it's important, when you're the buyer's agent, to understand your client but it's just important on the seller's side to be qualifying the buyer too. And I think we talked, it's not always best price wins, it's ability to close should win. And you've got to be mindful of that and focus on that as well. And especially in these type of times, there's a lot of issues that come up, and you want the ability to close to be the main thing, not everything driven by the price.
Yeah. And that takes us to episode 51. And again, this is a big issue in the marketplace, which is guide to dealing with residential tenant issues, right? I mean, the Residential Tenancy Act is very one-sided, I would say, and it really leans heavily towards the rights of tenants. So realtors and landlords have to really know the Residential Tenancies Act and how to deal with tenants in this marketplace. So great episode, lots of tenant issues that we get into, and lots of great discussions and great pointers when it comes to dealing with residential tenants.
Yeah, from a few different points of view. Are you selling a property subject to a tenancy where the buyer is going to be assuming the tenancy and what's involved with that, or is the intention to get the tenant out? And can you get the tenant out? And how do you get the tenant out? And what are the rights of the tenant and the landlord? So an important resource for people to look back on and have in the library as well.
Yeah. And then we go and get into the power of rent to own and what the rent to own model means for realtors in episode 52.
Yeah, and I think that was an interesting one too. Where here there's a focus on particular properties that go into a pool. There's two different pools: one of investors looking to invest in these things, and one of people that that there's a vehicle to allow people to buy their first home by renting it first with an agreement in place that they're going to ultimately buy it out. So it's an interesting piece of the market. I don't know how to describe it better than that.
No, absolutely. And I think it solves a lot of issues in the marketplace. Like if you're going through a divorce, if you have bad credit, there's a way to really help buyers out in that situation and still, get them into owning a home without actually closing that transaction, but giving them means to do it in the future, right? So,
Right.
And from a realtor's point of view, what a great way to solve some complex problems that exist out there in the marketplace and really, service a niche that is really needed in the marketplace. So amazing episode, great business building ability for realtors by using the rent to own model. And it's a concept that's been around for a really long time, but very few realtors actually understand the power of it and how it can be utilized properly to really help them grow their business. Like imagine if you went to a marketplace and you said, hey, bad credit, come talk to me because I can still find you a house and get you into home ownership. Like imagine how many people would actually come to you and what position that would put you in, and think about the wonderful help you'd be providing these people by offering them something which any other lender would tell them that is impossible to do.
Right. But there's a number of considerations that have to go into place to do it. You have to do it properly. You have to set it up properly. So this was a discussion about, here's an example of how it's structured, how it works, why it works. And if you want to do it, take a look at this episode.
Absolutely. Then we talked about multiple representation in episode 53.
Yeah. And again, like, is that ever a good idea? Like the easy answer is no, because you only get yourself in trouble. And here's why. And we go through the, through a lot of the cons. There's some pros too. The obviously pros, you get commission on both sides, but you really got to be careful in doing that, especially in a market now that when there are these issues coming up on closing and people can't close and people need extensions and you're on both sides of a transaction, you can't negotiate fairly with yourself. And all of a sudden you're going to be bowing out. And then are you really providing the proper service to either client? So you got to be really careful, especially in this type of market. It was a little bit easier in a market where we're negotiating price, closing date, no conditions. Everybody's getting their money on closing and your close. Okay. That's different. We're not in that market. You got to be very careful.
Yeah, and you can't put your own interest in earning double commission ahead of your client's interest to close the transaction, right? So that's where you have to be very careful navigating those two, I would say, contradicting interests, right?
Yeah. So an important one. So just be careful. People want to earn money. They want to earn their commission, but look and think long term, not short term. And you're better off, in most cases, not double ending things and making sure you're acting properly for one party. Do a good job. You'll get the referrals. That'll help grow your business. And because to get in trouble on one file, on one transaction, because you're on both sides, sometimes that can cause so much damage to you as an agent. And so anyways, think hard about it. Watch the episode. Some good pros and cons discussion.
Episode 54, Central Lock technology and making homes safer. And we had James Reynolds on this episode, who is a director for Central Lock. He's been with them for a really long time. And here's a concept that we have an electronic logbox that has amazing security, where realtors are being notified when an appointment happens, when the logbox is open, when the logbox is closed. And even the logbox has a technology that if an appointment is not booked or is canceled, that it will not open and it will not release the key. And the whole concept here is to make homes safer, to protect the consumer, to protect the seller. And this is a wonderful company and a wonderful piece of technology that I personally hope is going to be more prominent in the marketplace in the future.
Yeah, and I think it will. Like this type of technology, I think is crucial now, because the days are gone where you hand over the keys to your lawyer like they used to hand the keys to us, meet them to sign up for the sale of the property. They give us the keys, and we're delivering the keys to the buyer's lawyer, and then the buyer's going to pick up the keys. They're like, that whole process has changed now, and we need keys to be left in lock boxes, and we need this technology. And there's so many advantages to this type of thing, and I think it's a great concept, and I think it's going to be extremely successful.
I agree completely. Episode 55, dealing with conditional offers. David, over the last 2 years, prior to March of this year, the word conditional wasn't even on the table, was it?
No, it's like, what? There's conditional offers. You can negotiate conditions again. Well, yeah, if you're an agent, you better sharpen your toolbox, bring out, dust off some of the old conditions and take a look at them, because that's really what you're going to need right now. Because all of a sudden the market shifted. We're not doing we're not doing pre-inspections before you make an offer. We're not reviewing status certificates in advance like we were way back then. Now you need a condition on inspection, you need a condition on a status certificate review if it's a condo, you need a condition on financing. And we even talked about if you're buying first, can you negotiate a condition for the conditional upon the sale of the buyer's property, which is something we haven't seen in the market for many, many years. And that is now something that's come back as well. So how do you negotiate conditions? If you're an agent that hasn't done it, you better learn how to do it and make sure you get proper help and guidance through the real estate brokerage, through the lawyers involved. Really important in today's market.
Yeah, and David, I think you've touched on a very prominent point, which is conditional offers on the sale of buyer's property are absolutely rampant in this market. We're seeing them more and more, and buyers are not sure where they're going to fall in, right? They don't know what's going to happen with their property, what price they're going to get for their property. So they want a little bit more assurances and safety moving forward. So we're seeing a lot more offers with the condition on the sale of buyer's property. I was involved with putting in an offer on a cottage property a couple of weeks ago. There were 8 offers that came in, and the top 2 offers both had a condition on the sale of a buyer's property. And one of those offers was actually the winning offer, which was mind-boggling, because I mean, if you have 8 offers, it's really a tough situation to be in to accept a conditional offer on the sale of buyer property. But I mean, that is just the reality of today's market. And as realtors, we have a fiduciary duty to protect our clients. So in this market, it's not a bad idea to insert a condition on the sale of buyer's property if they feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Episode 56, everything you need to know about title insurance.
Yeah, well, title insurance is part of every residential transaction we do these days. In our office, we won't do title. We won't close a residential transaction without title insurance. We do sometimes close commercial transactions without it, but more often than not, we're using title insurance as well. So it's an important part of the process, important for agents to understand and lawyers to understand how title insurance can be used and what a great tool it can be to get transactions closed and closed on time. So that was sort of the focus of our discussion there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're running short on time, but we have just a couple more episodes to go, and then we're going to be all wrapped up. So episode 57, the realities of litigation, a shifting market. We had Sarah Ernstein with us, who is a litigation lawyer, and Sarah is absolutely phenomenal. And David, you and I go to great lengths to make sure that none of our transactions fall into the realities of litigation. But sometimes, no matter what you do, and no matter what steps you take, it's unavoidable. And having Sarah's perspective about litigation and how it affects both the buyer and seller, and the realities of litigation in our marketplace was a great conversation.
Yeah, and people like Sarah right now are going to be extremely busy over the next couple of years, unfortunately, with litigation. Unfortunately for her, for Sarah, good news for Sarah, but she's doing a ton, and will be doing a ton of litigation that comes out of real estate deals gone bad. So it's really important to understand what's going to happen in that process and how it's going to be sorted out, and where the law stands on those things, and how your deposits are handled, and when there's a binding agreement of purchase and sale, at what stage, and what happens if you can't close, what happens to your deposit, what are the damages that could flow from that. You have to understand all that, because it keeps people focused on trying to avoid it, because it's that's what we really want to encourage people: find a way to close your transactions and not get into a litigation process. Unfortunately, there's going to be a lot that are not going to be able to avoid it, and they're going to be retaining people like Sarah to protect their interests. So there's no question that that's a growth area right now. But the key, from my perspective, from your perspective, we want to get transactions closed. We want to keep people away from litigation. But you have to understand what could happen, what your rights are, in order to help you make those decisions that sometimes are uncomfortable. Even when you think you're totally in the right, sometimes it still makes sense for you to negotiate something, because you're better off settling and closing something than standing on your legal rights and principles and having it go through the courts for the next couple of years.
Oh, no doubt. But I think as a realtor and as a professional, it's really important that you understand the roadmap in litigation, that you understand, how courts have ruled in the past, so you can, keep that as a deterrent factor in your back pocket, and ensure that, buyers and sellers understand the realities of litigation, that you can accurately explain, which will lead to a closed and a successful transaction, right? You never want to let your buyer or your seller go down a path where it's going to cause more headaches, cost them more money, and cost them time if they don't have to go down that path. So understanding the realities of litigation, I think, especially in today's market, is very important. I would encourage everybody to listen to that episode. And then we go into episode 58. And this is an episode that Jonathan Hakohen co-hosted with myself. We talk about the market. We talk about his podcast a little bit. And we talk about InAgent and how right now, there's so many opportunities to do deals from an investment point of view, right? So as the market is changing, as the market is shifting, it is just riddled with opportunities for the investor client. So if you have anybody that's thought about investing in real estate right now, the big word to really use when describing our market is opportunity.
Yeah, and then we had one of, I thought one of the most interesting podcasts we've had with Carl Gomez on. We mentioned him earlier. He was the chief economist from CoStar. So instead of you and I doing our usual weekly thing of being amateur economists, we actually had a pro on that's got the stats, got the details. And some of what he did was, what he told us was affirming some things that we sort of thought, in our amateur status as economists, like, where the trends were going and what was going. But I thought he was very interesting, very fascinating, the way he breaks things down as to what got us to this point and what the future looks like. And I thought some of the interesting discussion was interest rates. Even though we're in this period where the rates are growing, he sort of sees the end coming, and then there'll be a settling back down to I think he said something in, I think I asked him, like, what's a normal interest rate? And he thinks it's going to settle somewhere in the 4 to 6%. It's not going to get up to the crazy double-digit numbers, and it's not likely to get back to, zero interest rates, but it'll probably settle somewhere in the not too distant future in the 4 to 6% range.
Yeah, that was one of those podcasts where I think we could have kept talking for hours and hours, but great guest, and great to hear his perspective on the economy, on commercial real estate. I know you asked him about office leases and what the future is. We talked about some trends in the workplace. Just a great episode, great guest, and thoroughly enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah. And that brought us back to 60 and our recap. So anyways, this is, it's been fun to go down memory lane. We'll see what the next 60 are going to look like in the future. We've got some guests hopefully coming on in the near future. We got circle back on certain topics coming up, and we'll find an interesting episode hopefully every week to keep this going.
Yeah, and David, as I look at the list of episodes, I mean, there's so many takeaways and so much education and business development that we go through. Really excited to keep these going, to keep these conversations going, and really happy to hear that people have been tuning in and sending questions, and we've been hearing tons of feedback from realtors, and keep it coming. Reach out to David Korman, reach out to myself. We'd love to hear from you guys. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Okay, thanks everybody. See you next episode.
All right, bye-bye.